What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a very special model airplane review. It's your host, Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Gemini 200 Boeing VC-25, better known as Air Force One. In this video, I'll talk about the box, then the model itself, and at the end of the video, I will give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. This is going to be a pretty long review, so that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get this started. Here we go. Starting off with the box. The box is a standard issue cardboard box. It's pretty large at 34 centimeters lengthwise and height-wise, and 12 centimeters wide. You can also tell that this is a 2023 release with the fact that the text on the box here and here is gray instead of the usual gold color that Gemini has done with their Gemini 200 boxes ever since Gemini 200 was a thing. So this is the newer release. I'll show you around the box now. So here's the front, bottom, right side, top, left side, and here's the back side. Take a moment to read this if you'd like to, and if you can. That text looks pretty small. Included is the model, fully assembled, painted, and ready to go. Two options for landing gear configurations, one in the extended position, the other in the retracted position. For the duration of this video, I will have the model with the landing gear in the extended position, but I will demonstrate what the covers look like in the retracted position later in the video, so stay tuned for that. And last but not least, we have a simulated wood display stand made entirely out of metal. Here is what the model looks like on the display stand. The included display stand does an excellent job at holding up the model and supporting it, so only if you want to, you can get an extra display stand, but the included display stand will suit your model just fine if you choose to display it on the display stand. And at last, here's the model itself. Normally in this segment of the video, I try to do a quick 360 of the model so you can get a good look around it, which I'll try to do it in this one. Just don't expect it to be as good as my other ones because this model's pretty darn big and it's hard to handle with fingers only. That, and I don't want to mess up the landing gear by rolling it on the table, so I'll do my best to do that. So the fuselage length is 34 centimeters, wingspan is 30 centimeters, and okay, that did not sound good. Anywho, it is 9.5 centimeters tall. Pretty darn big, as I said earlier, and accurate to 1 to 200 scale. And as you can see, I'm struggling to handle this thing. This model is quite heavy because it is made primarily out of die-cast metal with a few plastic components mixed in there. Most notably, the horizontal stabilizers, those are made out of plastic. Alright, so that was easily one of the worst 360s I've done on this channel. Starting up the review with the fuselage, we'll start here at the nose section of the plane. Nose shape overall looks pretty good. Profile seems to match the 747, or, well, the VC-25. Pretty good. We have this dome here at the front of the plane, and it seems to be pretty good. The joint between the dome and the fuselage is barely noticeable. Well, not barely noticeable, but it's not too noticeable. So when you look at it up close, it definitely looks like there's a gap, but from afar, it doesn't look too bad, so I'll let that one slide. Overall, paint application up at the front seems to be okay. However, you can see in the light reflection there that there is a bit of texturing to the paint, which is a very small thing, but it's rather suboptimal. I do not like to see that. And in terms of paint colors, the dark blue here is a little bit too dark when compared to the real Air Force One. I believe it's a little too dark. It's still acceptable, but just not as accurate. Now, another thing that I've noticed, which is unfortunately common across all of this model, or all of this release, is down here in the bluish green section. So you can see the bluish green is pretty well defined right here. Now, you'll see that there's a band of bluish green that's slightly different from the rest of it when it comes close to joining with the chrome paint here. And I believe this is a paint application issue because I guess they didn't apply sufficient paint in this area to cover up the chrome underneath. So that's another small issue, but it is definitely noticeable if once you see it. So sorry if you can't unsee that now, but that is a problem with this model. Aside from that, everything looks pretty good. Lots of printed detail. Some of it's hard to see, especially the door here, but it is there. Just if you can't see it, trust me, it's there. So I'll start trying to move down the fuselage, assuming I don't break the landing gear. Just kidding, no, I'm holding the model up. So here we have the United States of America title, and this is where I do find another small set of issues that I can nitpick at. So we got a small piece of white paint chipping into the blue here. We have a scratch right by the S in the States title. Now this is very small, but it still is a scratch and therefore still a paint defect. And I don't notice anything else out of the ordinary, so at least there's that. All right, so here's that scratch a little bit closer. It's pretty well defined when you look at it, and there's also a very small stain here. Now also the white sheet line here kind of went onto the curve of the wing a bit awkwardly. You can see there's some gray paint poking through the white there, which again, very small nitpicks, but the amount of paint application issues that I'm finding is rather suboptimal. I don't really like this. All right, so I'll try my best to move down the rest of the fuselage. That's much better. All right, let's continue. Aside from that, I don't notice anything that I can nitpick about or criticize necessarily, so everything else is pretty decent. Here's the left side of the vertical stabilizer. This looks pretty good. Rudder molded detail looks pretty good. American flag looks good. Printed detail looks good. Painted detail looks good. Just that blue color is a little too dark, but aside from that, it is pretty solid. No complaints. Now, normally I go with the right side of the aircraft with relative haste because there really isn't that much to talk about when compared to the left side, but on the vertical stabilizer here, there is a bit of white paint poking from under the blue paint here, and this side has a bit of a textured feel to it. Instead of the smooth feel with the other side, this feels a bit textured, as if the paint was applied improperly or something happened during the paint application process. There's also a few very small stains here. Originally, there was an entire fingerprint here that I was able to wipe away with, ironically, my finger. But yeah, there is still a few stains here. So quite a few stains and small scratches here in this model that I'm not too sure I'm liking. All right, so now I'll show you the rest of the fuselage. So I'll bring the model along this way. No issues really that I can see, so I won't complain. So right side looks to be a little bit better. However, I almost forgot about this. So you can see here there's a small stain. This actually was a much bigger stain when I initially opened up the box. However, I was able to scratch off most of it, and I haven't tried to clean it off all the way, but I still need to do that. But I've noticed, yeah, there's a lot of stains on this model. Well, a lot as in way more than usual. Way more than I've ever seen before. And here, everything else seems to be pretty okay. Again, that small paint issue with the bluish green here is present, but aside from that, there's really nothing else I can complain about. So, interesting so far. Moving on to the wings. The wings on this model appear to not be as detailed, but this, I believe, is accurate. When compared to other airliners and models, the top of the wing here doesn't have nearly as much detail. However, molded detail is very good with the control surfaces. That looks pretty good. On the left wing, we have the U.S. Air Force roundel here, and we do have some painted detail in the form of the metallic paint on the leading edge slats. Now, something I'd like to point out is this probe on the back of the wing. Now, yeah, this is accurate, but I just want to issue a warning that these are extremely sharp and fragile, so when handling this model, you need to take extreme care not to damage these because it's very easy to damage these and extremely difficult to reglue them in place depending on how you break them. So just be very careful when handling this model. Make sure you have experience handling precision scale models and you'll be good to go. But even then, clumsy guys like me, we mess things up every once in a while. Now, normally I don't do this, but I'll show off the right wing. And the reason I want to do this is because I did notice some issues with the paint application of the metallic paint here. Now, if my camera would focus. So you can see that it's a little bit textured here on the metallic paint. Now, it's harder to see through the camera, but some of the paint appears to have been brushed off or something like that, exposing some of the gray paint underneath. So paint application was a little bit inconsistent there. And here we have the USAF title there, which stands for United States Air Force. So that's cool. Now, ironically enough, the bottom of the wing is a bit more detailed than the top of the wing. You can see we have a bit more painted detail down here, but still it's nothing too crazy. And at the same time, there really isn't all that much to put down there. Now, something that is pretty cool that Gemini did is the printing on the back of the pylons here. You can see there's some sort of green there. I'm not sure what that's for, but it's there, and I believe it's accurate, so that's pretty cool. Moving to the rear of the aircraft, here we've got our horizontal stabilizers. Like I said earlier, these are made out of plastic, and this is probably because these also have probes, so they needed to modify the mold to do that. And these probes are a little bit more flexible than the ones on the wings, but they're still very fragile, and I imagine they're a nightmare to fix. So just, yeah, there's a ton of places you can damage this model, so be very careful with that. Pretty nicely detailed here. I don't have any complaints. APU looks pretty good, actually. Lots of detail back there. I do notice maybe a few paint chips here and there and paint inconsistencies, but yeah, nothing too insane. Looks pretty solid. And the underside of all this looks to be pretty good as well. I lied. Okay, so it appears as though some of the paint is coming off of the fuselage here. It's very loose, and some of the blue paint here kind of got washed out with the white, which makes me think that either the paint application, you can see it's coming off of the model, either the paint application here, something went wrong, or this thing was previously broken. And this is the horizontal stabilizer is on there pretty firmly, so it might be an issue with the paint application there. This issue does not appear to be present on the right side, though. Moving on to the engines of this model. The engines are something I'd like to talk about because Gemini actually released this model a few years ago, so this is the second time that they released this aircraft. Now, the reason I bring this up with the engines is you notice that the front part of the engines here, these are just painted in metallic silver, and same with the exhaust back here. These are actually supposed to be reflective chrome, like the chrome on the fuselage. It's supposed to be very shiny, and originally Gemini jets did do this with their first release. However, they chose not to do this with this release for some reason, which is rather upsetting to see. Furthermore, the landing lights here on the wings, you can see these are printed. On the previous release, those were physical gems like you'd see on the top of the fuselage with some of the lights. So they also removed that feature as well. So this model is considerably less detailed and accurate than compared to the first one, which is kind of a testament to Gemini's drop in quality. But yeah, this is kind of upsetting to see. Nonetheless, though, the engines are pretty decent. As you can see, the insides of those engines do not have any spinner spirals, which is accurate. And the fan blades do spin, albeit a bit stiff with some of them. But they do spin. This one spins a bit easier if my camera would focus. But yeah, pylons don't appear to be as detailed, but all their detail is under the wing where it's a bit harder to see. But engine shape looks pretty good. It's just, yeah, they're less detailed than the first release. Moving on to aerial details, this model is jam-packed with aerial details. We've got a dome up at the front of the plane, and you can see there's a gray stain on this, which I'm not sure why that's there, but it's there. This is one on the front of the aircraft. Let me show you the top of the aircraft. This feels like an Oprah Winfrey show. You get an antenna. Everywhere on the fuselage gets an antenna or some sort of addition. So at the front, we've got a 3D light here. This is the same kind of light I was referring to with the landing lights. Very small antenna here, and we also have a stain, or we have a scratch right up here. It's very hard to see if that, yeah, because the camera doesn't want to focus, but yeah, we got a small scratch there. Then we have an antenna here, more communications things all across the aircraft, and all of these are aligned pretty much perfectly with the vertical stabilizer, which is pretty good. They're all straight, and I haven't noticed any that are weak or detached, so at least those were consistent, because reattaching those is really annoying to deal with. On the bottom of the aircraft, thankfully, we have a bit less details, but nonetheless, we still have quite a few. We've got a small antenna here, another antenna here, light here, and two smaller antennas back here. Very nicely detailed, and you can see some of the printed and molded detail on here is pretty darn extensive too, so this model is definitely not lacking in its detail. At the rear of the fuselage, we also have these things. I have no idea what they are, but they're there, and they look pretty good. I don't see anything wrong with them. So moving on to the landing gear. The landing gear on this model are pretty good. They do support the model relatively securely, so that's good. And you can see the gears pivot. The main gears, the wing gears definitely pivot a bit more than the fuselage landing gears, which is accurate. It looks like there's a wheel attach. There we go. The wheels do not roll though. At least, well, they roll very stiffly on some and do not roll on others. Like this one, that's got no rolling action going. Sometimes you do have to free them up a little bit, but we have no rolling. These landing gear are attached via a magnetic system, so if I want to just take them off, all I got to do is give it a nice pull, and they come right on out. And they fit really well, and I don't really notice any issues with these. They're very nicely detailed, too. You can see the gear detail is pretty darn impressive, so very good job on Gemini with the landing gear. I won't complain too much about it. Same story with the nose gear. It also attaches via magnetic system. Here you can see it there. And you can see the nose gear landing lights. Those are actual 3D gems, the same type of gems that would be on the leading edges of the wings with the landing lights. And I believe the wheel is supposed to pivot. However, on my example, the wheel does not move. It does not rotate, which personally I prefer, but some other collectors would like this wheel to be moving, so just beware of that. Here is what the landing gear covers look like for the retracted position. These are actually pretty darn good. They fit into the model very well. Some of them do require a bit of pushing, namely the ones on the wings, but they fit very well and they fit securely. They fit through a system of magnets, so if I turn the model over, they will not fall out, and they fit very smoothly with the fuselage. So if you want to display this thing with the gears retracted, go for it. The main gear ones are pretty solid. Now, the nose gear one, not exactly. First off, the nose gear one definitely has a drop in quality because there's some sort of stain or scratch, or I'm not even sure. Yeah, a huge scratch on this one. That and the gap between the cover itself and the nose is pretty large. It does fit securely, very loosely actually, but the magnet does enough to hold it in its spot. So the nose gear one is not exactly the best, but the main gear ones are just fine. The included plastic tools do a great job of helping to remove these retracted covers. You just gotta stick it in the designated slot and they come right on out. So you get 2 of these. Just don't push too hard because these are made of plastic and you can break them pretty easily. Alright, so this is the best I can give you from the front of the aircraft. Gear balance looks pretty good. That's very nice to see. Wing flex is acceptable. Engine clearance is good. Cockpit window printing is ever so slightly slanted. I won't complain all that much about it, though. It's, well, yeah, it definitely is a little bit slanted. Vertical stabilizer is straight up, so that is very good to see. Horizontal stabilizers look pretty good as well. Only complaint I have here is, yeah, that cockpit window printing is slightly slanted, but it's, yeah, no, it's nothing exactly too crazy, but it is noticeably slanted up front. Now, I will point out that the cheat lines up here at the nose of the plane, those are pretty good, actually. JC Wings and Gemini jets have had trouble with the cheat lines on their aircraft recently, but this one seems to be okay, which is very, very good to see. A step in the right direction. And at the end of one of my longest reviews, finally it's over. I'll try and speed this up so I don't waste more of your time. Well, this model was pretty decent. There are quite a few small defects with it, which the amount of them is rather upsetting, honestly. I didn't like that. And the types of defects like paint scratches and stuff, it's things that I cannot fix, which those are the defects that I hate the most. So yeah, in terms of my recommendation for this model, it's certainly a downgrade from the original release. If you have the original release, keep it, don't sell it. Machine mustard man. Anyway, yeah, it's decent. I'll say that when compared to the other release. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great model, but the amount of defects and quality control issues, it's very risky to buy it. So, do I recommend this model? Yes and no. It's mixed. Yes, because, well, it's Air Force One, for Pete's sake. You can't go wrong with that. But no, because you'll probably run into some defects. Some of them might be worse than this. You might get a perfect example. You never know. It's definitely a gamble when buying from Gemini. Still, though, nonetheless, these little small issues and stuff, from afar, it's Air Force One. It's a beautiful aircraft. Nothing can beat the Queen of the Skies, the 747, especially painted as Air Force One. It's still a beautiful plane. I'll definitely be keeping this one in my fleet, but yeah, it does have its problems. So, buy it, but proceed with caution. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching till the end. This is definitely one of my longer reviews. Stay tuned for more airplane content. I definitely have a few reviews coming up, so I hope you are there to watch those as well. And that's all I've got for you. Like, comment, and subscribe. Take care of yourselves. Happy collecting. See you next time.